total asset value of the sidewalk and the curb and gutters, then if you split it up into projects, it would be something like, I forget the numbers now, but it would be a huge amount you would need to do each
Well, I
year.
think we've got, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we've got like 35 kilometers of sidewalks.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Basically, the way the concrete works is you're going in and replacing the road, do the concrete at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I started with the roads asset here, sorry, so the replacement value or the roadway asset value is over $69 million. And that number, I believe that does include the sidewalks and curb and gutters in there as well. Oh, no, it doesn't. So this is the one about the concrete, sorry. So the sidewalk and curb and gutters, their asset value is like over $22 million.
So that's what you meant by concrete.
Yes, that's concrete works would be sidewalk and curb and gutter. So that figure 5.3 shows just where all that sidewalk and curb and gutters are in town. So like Mark said, the concrete would be replaced at the same time that you replace the road.
And this is based on red only.
This map 2014. So I don't have that one in here for some reason, but
But it would be based on need, not replacing anything that's green or yellow.
Correct.
Right.
yeah,
So what will happen, what happens is we do have the report.
Yeah.
That was done, and generally we'll go out, when we know the concrete contractor is gonna be in town.
Right.
We'll go out and we'll drive the streets and we'll pick out the areas we know that we're trying to deal with them and condition first. And we have a bunch of people who will call, well, sidewalk needs to be replaced, we'll put you on the list. But that doesn't mean we're going to do your sidewalk. That means we'll look at it, but it will be evaluated in terms of worst case condition. And it gets to be a challenge because there are a lot of sidewalks that would be in a very similar condition, but we've got 100,000, so we go out and we measure the sections, and that's what we do. And when we get to the number of 100,000 or close to it, we basically say, okay, that's what we can do this year. So, but probably towns put in, you know, I've been here 10 years, they probably put in close to $1 million in sidewalks in the last 10 years.
So this map is old on here. I haven't updated that.
Yeah.
So that's from 2014.
But we do have we do have a new, like I said, we did have a condition assessment report done in 22, and they walked every sidewalk, EPS in every spot. I think they're pretty particular, and I think there's like 1,700 deficiencies. But we're making headway, but it's gonna take some time. So
Thank you for that.
and the other thing we get to, you may hear on council concerns about mobility in terms of handicap ramps and
Oh,
accesses.
they're missing
So
everywhere, yeah.
when we're doing a section of sidewalk that is close to and tying into that, we automatically do the wheelchair curb, but there's no doubt, I would say we maybe have 10% of our sidewalks have wheelchair curb access.
So when we do a road overlay, we'll assess the, if there needs to be a pair around. So stuff we do in overlays.
And that's how this capital plan is assuming that the concrete would just be replaced with the roads as we go through the roads. So yeah, so with a over 50-year life cycle of the sidewalk, if you were to do annual replacements and have all your sidewalks replaced in 50 years, it'd be crazy expensive. I think that $380,000 per year would be the estimate. So yeah, it's got to be broken up. It was recommended back in 2014 that you do the smaller projects, 25 to 30,000 per year based on budgets.
But we've been doing 100, Sarah, so
100, yeah, it looks like it was 50 actually that
no,
it was considered back in 2014.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, 100, I'll update that in your report too, that's 100 now. Okay, so this table here is showing your combined infrastructure asset value, so for all your water, sanitary, stormwater, road systems, sidewalks, everything all combined is worth about $167 million. So that's about $67,000 per resident.
So if every resident cuts that check, we can get.
Yeah,
a new
we
revenue.
replace anything.
So what's that, how many you got, Chris, 5? You can cut us a check for 400,000 now?
So we'll see what the payment schedule is.
Not until his payment gets done.
Yeah, that's what's great.
But if you break it up more on like an annual, like the life expectancy of all of this and an annual cost would be almost 3 million a year. So yeah, that's a lot.
So just go back for a second.
Oh, sorry.
The one thing this doesn't include is buildings,
Yeah.
your structural building as well.
Okay.
Because when we're looking at this stuff, we're taking a look at one side of your capital budget. Just your water, sewer, that stuff, your services. This does not include your buildings. And the buildings, I think, is the worth of your buildings is about $50 million capital asset on top of all of this. So when you get into this, is your competing priorities is your buildings, which are aging as well, with your infrastructure. So
And
that's where,
it's an asset as long as it's maintained, because if
Yeah.
not, it becomes derelict. right?
Yeah.
So we had this discussion last night, so as part of the grant program where we got the funds for the building condition assessment reports on most of our town facilities, not all of them, but most of them. And we do have that report. And as we talked last night, it's probably what we need to do is bring it before council and spend the time on that report, similar to what we're spending the time on this. Generally, though, my comment on buildings, for the most part, they're in good condition. They're aged, but they've been maintained. But I know when we go through the building condition as asset, some of the comments in the reports will be, and I'll use electrical panels as an example. That they'll go, well, your electrical panels working fine, no issues, but if you have issues, you won't be able to simply fix those electrical panels because they're obsolete. So, there's more comments that way, and I told this to a lot of people, my biggest fear, we know the arena curling rink complex is a big community asset, that is over 40 years old. And if that building got to the point where it needed to be replaced, it's probably a $40 million bill in today's dollars, and that number scares the crap out of us and me. So we've been doing improvements and making improvements on it as they become necessary. So I think if you walk into that building, for example, and go, geez, this building's 45 years old, it's in pretty good shape, but there will be some larger ticket items down the road that will be coming forward on some of those buildings, but we don't have anything that's really new, so.
but I would say, you remember that graph we had on the roads?
Yeah.
Buildings do exactly the same thing. Right? If you
Catch it at the right
you
time.
keep catch it at the right time, you can keep the
Yeah.
life of that structure, but if you let it go too far, you've lost that
There's no
economic
coming
share.
back.
There's no coming back.
Yeah.
Right.
The only way to come back is spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think in this building, you're in that Drumheller issue right now is where they don't have a curling rink.
No.
Right? And they're having to figure out how do we spend all this money for a curling rink? And the other challenge they got is that small population, what's the population of the community that's actually using that facility? And you get into the thing of, all the way spend it on sewer line, or do we spend it on a building? Well, it's easy to spend money. A building is an easy thing. People see the benefit of the building. The sewer line, they don't see that. So that's part of your challenges too.
But this community's always been very supportive of infrastructure projects.
Mhm.
And I'll use that as an example. we've never, in the time I've been here, been questioned from the public that we're rebuilding a road and putting in a new water and sewer line, but I'll use the example of the community center. So we've been trying to find some dollars to do a major renovation of the community center, because it was built in 1980. And it's functional, but it's got some areas that are very dated and need to be changed. So we went through that project, and it was a $1.8 million estimate to do this renovation. We did get feedback from some residents, again, not everyone, but we did get some feedback from residents that they didn't think that was a wise expenditure of dollars. So we tend to see it more on the building side, I believe, than we have on the infrastructure, core infrastructure side.
I think this information should be public. Like, I mean.
Yeah, well, our other
Put
plan
there
is
so
on
that
our website.
Residents of this town know how old our sewer
Yeah.
lines and stuff like.
Yeah.
It's like that Main Street project.
Yeah.
You know, look at the block we had over that, you know, was it necessary? Well.
But I think the flag that we're getting on that, Councilor Kroll, is more how it's going to affect their business during the construction period. And I know people are always concerned about the dollar, and a lot of people are, on the surface concerned that we don't need to make it look as pretty as we're making it look. But for the grant application that we're going through, that's one of the priorities, is to make it attractive, make people attend and develop business down there. We could simply go in and replace water, sewer, road, sidewalk and not do anything, but which would take care of the core infrastructure problem, but we wouldn't be successful with this grant application, because we have to show how we are driving people to the downtown economic development and business opportunities. But yeah, and the trouble with infrastructure and this stuff is the prices are going up.
And you'll see that in a second here.
And that's the challenge.
I don't wanna see that slide.
It's coming out.
I don't wanna see it.
I know.
The other thing is like those sewer lines that are 60 years old and that, they were done by the town employees.
Well, it was done,
Every water line and sewer line in this town was put in by town employees.
and all that work was done when Canada was coming back out of the war. So it was done as a post-war project to get people employed. So the federal government invested tons of money to service every municipality in the province as a make work project. That's not happening now. So that's part of that. That's what challenge.
Yeah. So, like we mentioned, some other challenges, the infrastructure is all getting very old. Also, just being rural Alberta, there's the disadvantage that it costs more money to have these services replaced, right? There's more travel involved, and it's harder to attract contractors out here.
Like it costs 10 to 15% more to do a water main project in Calgary.
Like here.
It's already in Hanna than it does in Airdrie.
Mhm.
All mold and demold, right?
Yeah, out
Yeah.
of town living allowance.
Yeah,
It would almost be cheaper, as Fred said, to hire 10 staff full-time for 5 years who are experts at doing this and get them to do the sewer lines themselves than it would be to actually hire a contractor, because the costs are so high to have them come out.
But you still need the backhoes, you need the equipment and all that sort of stuff. You need that initial capital investment to buy the equipment you need in order to do it.
yeah.
The challenge though, Councilor Murphy, I know it seems decent that you hired 10 staff, that's $750,000 a year. Right there that you're committing, and we've gone through our budgets and where would we find $750,000 a year, so.
And there's no, because I know back in the day, I worked for the federal government, we had funds for all sorts of, you needed to renovate your bathroom to make it accessible, there were funds. But things have changed now, there are no grants or anything, this would have to be taxpayer.
Well, there are
There are grants, but
Actually, I've got them listed.
and again, it's that butt slide that's coming
It's the
up.
butt slide, yeah.
That hurts.
Yeah.
So the other thing we've had, and it's been a problem out here, is to find people to actually bid on jobs out here. It's a very limited resource pool to,
Oyen's working on
get things,
a
people
new
here.
build on their lodge and
Well, the
it's,
only thing is you have to have a big enough project,
Accommodation is the biggest for us.
big enough project to make it worthwhile. And coming
Yeah.
out, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
and
and that's what
accommodation.
you've been, that's what Kim and the team have been doing here by keeping every couple of years
Saving and,
saving and getting a nice big project.
well, like our seniors amenities project,
We couldn't get anybody, and that was trails and
trails,
and stuff like that. So-
couldn't even get a tender.
And that's where I feel the provincial government has let the small rural municipalities down, is they're given. The other challenge you've got here is your grants that you go to are population based.
Yeah.
You saw from the first slide, Hannah's population hasn't changed. You haven't had that growth to keep up with that aging infrastructure. So I feel the provincial government has let down the small rural municipalities. And that the small rural municipalities should be getting more per capita than Calgary and Edmonton, those areas.
But then I think, and we'll get to that slide, but at the end of the day, I know those of you who were at the Alberta Municipalities Conference, when Sarah had up on her thing, we talk about the doom and gloom of our infrastructure. It's the same everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And that's why there was the big push at AM to have the resolution to have the, what do they emphasize now, the local government fiscal framework bumped up to 1.75 billion annually from 700 million. To try and deal with backlogs that are infrastructure deficits that's growing year after year because there's not enough money to put into it.
But is that gonna go to the urban centers or is it?
Well, that's
That's
the
the
formula they
challenge.
have to do,
Because that's, yeah, you get
that
more.
the province
votes
will
against
determine as well, so.
Population resources.
Yeah.
But they want our land for zone. And, well,
So this slide here is showing the projects that were actually complete in the last 10 years since our previous infrastructure management plan in 2014. There's a number of projects that were undertaken with a total $700,000 per year budgeted.
So go back to that slide, Sarah, just a second. So there are a couple corrections I think we need to
Okay.
make on this slide.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at it really closely, but I know, for example, the water reader booster we did buy.
Okay.
We did do the water reader software last year, but we didn't do the booster. But I'd have to look at that a little bit more closer, and I'm not sure what you're trying to capture in this slide.
So what I did is I just went into your capital budgets that you had presented,
Okay.
that you in your annual budget program, you had capital budgets. That's where this came out of, plus the ones I know that that we did ourselves, that MPE did.
Yeah.
Like the ones with Kruger those were just identified in your capital budgets, like that, the water reader booster,
Yeah,
the water reader software and all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
Those are just identified as capital budget items, so that's where I grabbed
Okay.
those, so they may or may not have been done, but that's. They're small ticket
and as
items,
you can see, we did a fair bunch of work in 2020. So we did approximately $2 million worth in 2020. This was the original plan, then during COVID, the province had a stimulus program that they put in place, so we took the opportunity to do the block in front of Home Hardware. And again, you can see that block was basically $630,000.
And again, in that case, it didn't matter how hard they tried to get it to not do it, it just kept happening, so it just needed.
Well, that one, yeah, we
Yeah.
had multiple
Yeah,
breaks
yeah,
there, and so we took the opportunity to do that, but the one thing about that project that I want to point out, so it was during COVID. And we did it, and I think we had 12 bids, which was phenomenal, but people were looking for work, so that's probably the best price we could have got at $625,000 to do that block. So now when we talk about doing blocks you're probably pushing closer in a regular world to 800,000 to 1 million a block. And that one we didn't even replace all of the curb and gutter or all of the sidewalk. We picked and choose sections of curb and gutter and sidewalk that should be replaced at the time, but we did replace all of the underground. So,
Yeah, and the services.
yeah, the services to those respective properties. So we haven't, as you see, we haven't done a ton of core infrastructure projects since 2020. We do have some dollars saved up, which, you know, because we haven't been spending our MSI or our federal gas tax. So we do have those dollars in place, primarily established to provide the matching for our downtown project and our bridge replacement project. So that'll probably take care of all of our deferred grant money. And that's where he said, when we're looking at Alistair and Pioneer, we're gonna have to maybe start putting some tax dollars into those projects to complete them. So, or pull from reserves or that to do those. So. And the airport lighting we're still in progress, so. It's been a frustrating one.
Okay, so this is kind of stuff we started talking about earlier with the potential grant funding. So sources of funding for the town for federal and provincial grants, as you mentioned, are based on a per capita basis, is the MSI funding. And it's
Sir, that I just wanna make sure council's aware, so 3 that Sarah has listed there, is an actual amount, but the MSI is broken up into 2 areas, so it's operating and capital. So the operating component is fantastic, we just got that bumped up a year or 2 ago, so it's just over 300,000. The capital is 277. And that's the part where we argue with the province, we need more money. If we were relying on that, that does a quarter of a block a year. So the 583 is a little bit deceptive in the fact that we've been under to assist with operating costs.
and then there's the Canada Community Building Fund. So in 2023, that was $160,000.
And that's formerly, sometimes you'll hear it referred to as the federal gas tax.
Okay, that's.
And it's been fairly consistent over the years. There's a formula built in, it's fairly consistent. I think in the 10 years I've been here, it's gone from about, first start was around 150, so it's slowly been increasing. There's been a couple of years where the feds have doubled the amount. So there's been a couple of years in the last 10 that we've done, primarily around COVID.
Election years.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's even election years, but COVID specifically,
yeah.
an opportunity to stimulate some work.
Yeah.
So we get that and we budgeted for that. So I typically capital what I've been using in our world. For example, in 2023, we would have used the 277 and the 160, so it would give us 430,000 approximately for capital. That is to build through MSI and the local government fiscal framework, but as AM's saying, it's not starting at the right point. It's starting at 700 million instead of 1.7 billion. So
Yeah, and then there's some other grant funding opportunities that are competitive in nature. So we've got the Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Program. For Hanna, they would provide 60% funding, but those projects are just for projects that benefit the whole town. Then there's strategic transportation infrastructure program. So we've talked about that one earlier. That's
so we've been relatively successful with that one at the airport. So we did get funding to pave the runway. I think that was 2018 maybe. So we got, that was a $800,000 project, so we got 3/4 through this STIP program. Then for the, lighting, we're just getting another 300 and some thousand towards the lighting. So for whatever reason, on the airport side, we've been successful. We've applied for our bridge. I think this will be year 3, so, we haven't had any luck with that one. And we also are looking at STIP for maybe there's a slight chance we might be able to get some funding for Pioneer and Palliser. They've got a local municipal initiative fund, but it doesn't have a lot of money in it, and it's significantly oversubscribed. So the transportation people said it won't hurt to put something in, but they cautioned us not to.
Yeah.
Stick about it, so.
Yeah, then there's also this Canada Coal Transition Initiative that,
We've gotten a lot of that.
Well, this one we haven't, we've got there's other funds through the Canada Coal Transition that Harvest Sky has, received significant dollars for. But this one is specific to our infrastructure, and they did allocate for the special areas 2 region, so primarily Youngstown, Hanna, special areas, about, I think it was 8.1, 8.2 million. So we've worked with, special areas in Youngstown and came up with a, cooperative plan on how that 8.2 will be shared, and the town has come to the table with the downtown project. And so we've gotten the approval from our locals that 4.1 we can apply for. Special areas that take most of the other fund will be working on their industrial park that they're planning south of the plant. So I think they've got 3.5 million, and they're looking at that project. So, and then there was a little bit more that was potentially could be allocated to the roundhouse to do some infrastructure upgrades there. So that's a one-off, that Canada Coal transition. It's not something we can count on in the future.
and other sources of funding for these projects being property taxes and borrowing reserves.
That's probably your biggest source of funding is when it comes to property tax, and that's where, as I say, the rubber hits the road.
Well, and we talked about that in our first budget meeting last night. So we generate $2.8 million in taxes. So when Sarah's slide said we should be spending $2.9 million a year, we don't even generate that money from our municipal tax budget.
Yeah. This is the butt slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
So the table here shows the last 10 years, the funding that has been obtained from the MSI and that CCBF and
Gas tax.
in gas tax when that was not included in MSI. And then our second column here shows the percentage of change since 213. So you can see in 2013, the town got about $930,000. 2023, it's only 743.
So I'd like to, though, Sarah, look at that table a little closer in terms of, like, when you say 2023, we've got 743,000. Again, as I said before, 305 of that was operating.
Yeah, it's not
So-
all for.
So like, if we're gonna talk specifically capital, we're at like 430.
So I guess the biggest thing we're trying to get at this slide is there's 2 points. One is I don't know how the hell you plan for funding when it's all over the place.
Yeah.
It's not a steady stream of funding. It's up one year, down the other. I don't know how you plan for something like that. But the second point is, and what we looked at, is if you were getting, if that 928,000 in 2013 was equivalent to $100,000, you're getting $80,000 now.
Or less.
Yeah.
That I would think, I would have thought that would be less.
Yeah. But it's comparatively, that's what we're looking at comparatively. If you had $100,000 invested in, it cost you in 2013 to do a project, just with the annual rate of inflation, that job is costing you $130,000 now. You got a 50% difference in what you're getting for grant funding versus what the cost of inflation's got. So the provincial government and the other government levels of government haven't been keeping up with the cost of inflation with what they're given. So all that's doing is it's downloading that cost onto the municipal government, onto your taxpayer.
Well, they're not only in infrastructure, they're doing with policing, they're doing.
Yeah.
They're doing
Yeah.
it, I mean, it's 2, 3, 4, 5-fold, I mean.
So it's when the municipality says, well, we've got it, because the only thing, if you're not getting the money, you got to get it from the taxes. So the taxes got to go up. Then you get this thing, well, we're being gouged with taxes and everything else, and
Well, the trouble we're into, and it's globally, is just the affordability. So it puts council in a tough position, and I mentioned that to them last night. I said, the same impacts that are happening to people on a personal level, whether it's their cost of insurance, their cost of food, their cost of fuel, all of those things impact us. Yet we're trying to hold the line to not put any costs on
Yeah.
them, and when we're doing that, we're going behind.
yes,
Because we're not keeping up with the cost of inflation, the cost of goods, but council's trying to also make the town and make our residents in a position that they can be as successful as they can, knowing the costs are going up, and we're trying to pull back and not add to those costs that they're facing on a daily or monthly basis. So, but it's a big challenge.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is that last figure in the drawings that shows your capital plans that were recommended as a part of this report. You can't really see the lettering on here, but it lists the order priority, the year anyways, that's recommended this project to be undertaken.
And I'll say the same thing, as I said to Mark in 2014, his capital plan, very aggressive, based on the dollars, trying to put some reality into that capital plan. I think when you see this one, we'll make the same comment that it's very aggressive. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, or the projects that are not necessary, but it's just based on our reality, they're very
Yes,
aggressive.
no, I guess it's the way I look at it. It's our job to tell you what you should be doing.
Yeah,
It's your job to figure out how you do it,
yeah,
or whether you can do it, right?
yeah.
We're telling you, these are the things you should look at doing. Or it's gonna start costing you more, or it's gonna start reducing your level of service that you're providing to your citizens.
Yeah.
It's up to you to figure out how you do that.
Yeah, no,
Right?
no, yeah,
And you can already, like Sarah already put up that slide, in order to just maintain your infrastructure and to start replacing, because it's getting old, you need to spend $3 million a year. We've already said that. When I think this here is how much, I can't remember what this one was. It was
close to
two,
that, yeah.
Oh,
2.5
that's
million.
on here.
Okay, there.
So I think what we need to do, maybe Sarah, that might work is we have that diagram in our package, right?
Yes, that's the
So
last.
maybe
drawing.
when you bring up the last slide, we can go through what you've got and point out on our papers that they can figure out where the project is.
Yeah, I'll flip back and forth.
Okay,
Okay, so, oh, this is hard to read. That table on the right is the 10-year capital plan that was put together as a part of this updated infrastructure management plan. So the first project we have here is for next year. That's the one, the downtown project. I think we've mentioned that one a lot. So that one,
except you've got a different number than what I have.
this should be from that latest cost estimate I
So
gave.
the last one I have was 5.577
5.6, 5.8.
something.
Oh, okay, I'll go double check that number. It's close.
Inflation.
Yeah, yes.
It's been a month.
It's been a month.
I thought I was right off of that, but yeah, let me check. This might include engineering. I'm not sure if it's the one you looked at.
Well, I think the 577, though, like, that's the one we used to submit for the grant.
Yeah.
We used the 5, it was rough, just under 5.8 million.
I'll double check that. Then we have the sludge assessment at the lagoon that we've talked about. That's estimated around $30,000.
So we don't, just so council's aware, right now, the existing 2024 budget that you saw last night does not include that sludge assessment. So that's something that council wishes to add into the 24 budget. That's something we'll have to do.
You just don't take a rowboat out and stick a stick in it.
You have a rowboat?
Yeah. Sounds like a loan you're.
Yeah.
I'll get the stick.
Yeah.
Go at it.
Whoever wants to go fishing on the lagoon, fill your boots.
No video.
That seems like a good fire practice to hop in there and just see when it gets.
Yeah.
Right, stand on shore and take readings.
Yeah.
What was that again?
Yell it
Yeah.
out for.
Yeah.
Just please don't fall out of that boat.
That'd be shit.
Oh, don't worry, you
Yeah.
can swim.
I don't know.
See what I'm falling.
Should be able to.
Okay, the next project we have on our list here is the road overlays we've talked about on Pioneer Trail and on Palliser Trail. And the bridge over, or the bridge.
So the question around that project, the Palliser Trail and Pioneer Trail overlays. So we've got that built into our 2025 capital budget that was presented to you last night. We had originally started talking with MPE before they had done any of their work, and it was an estimate of 4 million. So now, good problem, it's down to 1.9, but that's because they feel confident in the road structure that's there, that there doesn't have to be any, it's basically a mill and overlay on those roads. I know, talking with Corey, who's managing this project, when I said to him that we probably are gonna put it off to 2025, he's, oh, you better do it soon. I don't know if a year will make any, but we don't wanna, again, it's a project we don't wanna drag out to the point that then you now have to go in and start replacing the road base because it's deteriorated, because then your costs go up significantly. And I know those roads need some work. You probably drove in on them today, Mark, but I'm hoping we can stretch that and get it done in 2025.
Well, you haven't done them in the 20 years I've been here.
So I don't know when they would have been done, to be honest. And looking at the reports that on the thickness of pavement, some areas there's 70 millimeters.
Yeah.
Some areas there's 3 feet. So it's just been overlaid or done whatever and patched and just built up that way. But
Typically you'll get about 15 to 17 plus years where you have to do something major. So it's been 20 years and I haven't done anything on them, so that starts to give you an idea.
I've been here
on
24 and it hasn't been done.
So it gives you an idea on, they're starting to, they're at the point.
100%, I don't think anybody
Yeah.
can argue that they don't need work. So we have them in our capital plan right now for 2025. So.
Yeah, and then for 2027, we have that water looping project.
So just,
Pioneer Trail?
Sarah, sorry. So the Pioneer Trail Bridge replacement, so that's the one we've got the application in for.
Yeah.
And you have the duct for the water looping built into that 1.697, correct?
Yes. And then the water looping for the rest of the road, Pioneer Trail on the south end is anticipated to be a 2027 project. And then we have the rest of the overlay on Pioneer Trail for the north side. So that's on the north side of the bridge here. And there's also a water loop proposed up that road, as we mentioned before.
So just back to that, Sarah, no, the other screen. So 2027, the Pioneer Trail South Water Loop. So we have water along Pioneer Trail to Brant area. So that was basically tying onto that, connecting it to through the bridge.
So starting right here. Where the red line
Yeah,
starts.
it's somewhere in about there, yeah.
And in this east ditch across the bridge, and the rest of the way up Pioneer Trail to Fox Trail.
And then along railway.
But the water
And, yeah,
looping,
and this little piece here on railway.
okay.
Okay,
So that's
So that's this one here.
27.
2020.
Oh, and then you throw the lagoon in and then like. That's
Yeah.
a lot of money. So.
And then we threw the lagoon, and this $1 million is an estimate. Once that
Civilian.
survey is done, that's estimated better. And then another one in 2027 was the rest of that water looping and that overlay. Or no, yeah, a Fox Trail. So we have this piece here
I thought we did.
on the east and on the
We
west.
didn't do the water looping, but didn't we do it?
We did pave it.
We paved it, we just didn't do the
We
water.
didn't do the
looping.
water.
So the water main needs to go in here, finish that loop.
So to bring that up, we're having the same thing start to happen on that road as what's happening on 12. The road is basically pushing up and making a speed bump for no apparent reason. There's no trees, there's no roots, there's no,
We have it down further west too.
Towards-
on that road.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's happening towards the ball diamond. So all the way along there, for some reason, I'm getting lifting in the middle. And we thought it was tree roots on 12th, and we did a bunch of
Yeah,
millings on there. But that's one of my nicer roads, and now I have speed bumps.
Mm. I actually had overlay built in here on this one here, so if that's already been done,
the overlay's already been done there.
then I'll take that out.
But it's overlays, it's not that.
It's maybe
No.
overly kind of.
No, it just showed up, so I was just wondering if there's anything you could ask or look into or figure out why it would be. Normally, if there was a tree root coming across,
Yeah,
we have trees, but we don't have, and it's higher, so the root shouldn't be up top.
Does it stay all year or is it a certain
Yeah.
time of year?
It just showed up last year.
Tell it to go away, tell it to go away then.
We
I
tried.
do every time I drive down that road for,
It just showed up, tell it to go away.
is it getting any worse or staying?
yeah.
It doesn't get.
Okay, no, that's
We
interesting.
didn't, but when we did that again, that road's been there for however many years. We didn't do any base work on that
No,
road, we
no.
just did an overlay and all of a sudden it's.
There's no
But
culvert
I
there, Brent,
noticed-
or anything else? No, okay.
We have a little bit of, we have some of it, like 12th was bad. And we thought it was trees and we did cut some sections out and replaced it, but I think they're starting to
Yeah, it's
do
not
the same
bad.
thing again. And here, they started to form a few on here.
And if you wanted this. And there's only one patch that we didn't pave, which we should
In
have,
front of argue there.
Yeah,
is right there by our group.
Yeah,
Would it be our alkali issues?
What's that?
Would it be our alkali issues up there?
Is it causing them to bump like that? I don't know.
I don't know, it'd be worthwhile having somebody have a look at it, like, I got no idea.
Cause that road had soil cement in it. We hauled all that out and then just overlaid it.
Mhm.
But it just all of a sudden they're just starting to show up. We can drive over it when you're taking me to lunch.
Yeah, we'll go that way.
it's on the way.
It's on the way. But yeah, they're just starting to show, like you say, one of the nicer roads and all of a sudden.
Okay, so then after that, we have, there's just a pavement management assessment, so doing another road assessment in the town. And then the last three projects here are water, sanitary, storm main, and road replacements. In the town, so we have, I can't read these street names.
Second Street. First
That's
Street.
Fourth
There,
Avenue,
there.
Yeah, I think this is Center Street.
and that's Center Street, yeah,
This one here we're doing next year.
second,
We have this one.
that's First Avenue.
I gotta- Yes, that one's on First Avenue. Here. And then Second Avenue on the west side as well. And yeah, that one's Center and Fourth Avenue.
Which one? Second. So the funny part about this whole thing is I remember, Mark, when you did the 2014 one. So these three blocks here. Those three blocks were on that list.
Yeah.
Back then, And we haven't done them yet, and now they're pushed to 2030 from 2014,
Yeah.
so. That's the challenge when you look at this and you look at the reality on the street when you drive down the road, and this is, as I said to Mark earlier, this is an aggressive 10-year capital plan. And you go, well, what about this street? What about that street? What about this street? So.
The thing to remember about these reports is they're very dynamic, they're very fluid to
They're living documents.
they're living documents, so they change. But the purpose is to have something, to have a plan going
Yeah.
forward, like to know that you're gonna do that piece of First Avenue, that priority may shift as you go through the year, but it's only gonna shift to another priority. So your overall cost is what you should be doing doesn't change, and the priorities might change. But doesn't mean the priorities change, you know what I mean?
I think if the 2014 study, I don't even think Pioneer or House Reset.
No.
But I know over the last few years, there's been more heavy truck traffic on those roads. And they got to the point where they're starting to deteriorate, so. And those are the most highly driven roads in town. So.
Like, I think the key thing that comes out of this table is that we suggest you should be spending $1.3 million a year. For capital. For the past 10 years, you usually spend about $700,000 a year, so we're saying you need to double that.
Or end up with a sinkhole on Main Street or something, yeah.
That's your challenge. So you need to spend 1.3. You've seen your government funding going down, you've seen your costs going up. How are you gonna?
Well, you didn't want to see this slide.
The challenge is, how do you make up that difference? That difference is only growing the longer these projects go out. So, and this is just the capital. This doesn't include all your other competing priorities. Doesn't include your
Bearer
buildings.
of doom and gloom, that's what you are.
This doesn't include buildings. This doesn't include your normal operating
No.
costs, your cost for Brent, like his salary keeps going up.
Yeah, no.
So it doesn't include Brent's salary increase. So those are the realities you've got. Those are the challenges.
Good time. With budget before us.
Yeah,
And that's part of the reason why
We
we
already
did
are
this.
challenged.
Yeah,
Now we're duly challenged.
Yeah.
and just Kim's cost of living thing is, the cost of living on the taxpayer is getting harder and harder too. So the challenges are real.
Well, and the thing is, there's only so many dollars to go around, and where do you put them?
Do you have any solutions?
And it's
Start playing Lotto Max and
no,
hope for the best.
really what it is the municipality's gotta start talking. The province, start pushing back on the province, saying, because their share hasn't changed, what they're getting out of your my tax dollar go to the province hasn't changed. So. But they're cutting back what they're giving you, so you're having to make it up other ways. So really, so this document is more of a lobbying type document. It gives you something that you can go to the senior government and say, look, we need help. Or else we're gonna end up it's gonna be a real catastrophe at some point in time.
Would it be beneficial to bring our MLA, who happens to be the finance minister, in and go through this again?
For sure.
Yeah, like I think Nate knows this.
Well, I'm not arguing whether he knows it or not. I'm just saying that, hey,
But
Open up your wallet.
he's dealing with every.
No,
every
I
other
realize
job
that.
as well, too, but yeah, if he's our MLA.
but I think he can maybe relate better to us than he can some of the other centers. That's what I'm looking at it. I'm not saying that he's gonna give us any more money than anyone else. I'm just saying, I think he'd be more comfortable dealing with this group because he knows each and every one of us.
Yeah.
And I think that would give him maybe a more comfortable place in going into, for example, I don't know, Elk Point. And people he has no clue of who they are, what they are. They have these demands.
well, the challenge, and I think it's He's aware, and I know he's aware because he was at AM
Oh, yeah,
and, the moderator,
single them out.
well, but the moderator said we needed 175 billion instead of 1.75 billion, and his eyes just went. 175. Oh, sorry, 1.75, but that's still $1 billion more than what they have in their plan right now. And that's the starting point. And with the intention that it will grow from there. And, well, I don't know, I think it would be good to be able to have a chance to share this with Nate, just so he can, I agree, Mr. Mayor, relate to a community he knows in terms of what's forthcoming. I think the biggest challenge the province has had with MSI over the years is the disparity of funding levels amongst its members, amongst its municipalities, because we have majority municipalities are probably similar to us that need the money, but I know there are municipalities, more generally rurals, that have a bunch of money, billions of dollars in their plans. And the province, having to be fair to everyone, is struggling sending a check for $1 million to a municipality that has $1 billion sitting in their savings account, so.
But I think it goes back to, again, it's the education side of it. And not just at the government level, but also on the local resident level. Because the way I look at it, whether my tax dollars going to the province, my tax dollars going to the municipality, whatever, it's, at the end of the day, there's only one person paying for that bill. And that's me, the taxpayer. It doesn't matter how the money's coming there. So, is if we want to have a nice road, we have to pay for that nice road. There's a cost associated to that. It's not just a matter, well, the governments are wasting my money. So I think there's a public education side of that too. And on your point though too, Kim, I think it's a matter of going to the provincial government and saying, look, us small municipalities, we're different. It costs us more to do things. And we're not the Airbnbs of the world. We're not increasing by 6% population every year, but we're bringing in more money.
Well, I know this would be a few years back. The town wrote a letter to our MLA about MSI funding and basically said if they continued the progression that they had with MSI, that the town of Hanna would be unsustainable. And we are we are the largest urban in special areas, and we're one of the larger urbans in that MLA's riding, and he was very surprised with that comment. Because of those dollars, so. But I don't think with this plan, I don't think it's, I think it would be an opportunity to just share our experience in terms of the infrastructure and what's required and what our reality is in terms of the money we have to work with from our taxpayers to keep our community sustainable.
Yeah.
And honestly, to do our proactive advocacy, I've sat at the table here for 2 years. I've never had our MLA come before us. When I was a school board trustee, we had an annual meeting with our MLA, you know, just to have that communication and do the advocacy needed. So, you know what, now that we're talking about it, I think it's, would be highly recommended that, you know, we get before our MLA.
Yeah,
He is our MLA.
yeah, we haven't had any formals, but we've had some informals, like I know at the fire hall, when was that, in May?
Yeah.
We sat with Nate for half an hour, 45 minutes. But it was an informal thing. He was gonna be there. We were gonna have members of council there. Do you want us to take some time to sit? So it's certainly something we can put on his plate that we would like to have a formal meeting.
Sometimes it doesn't hurt to remind them that we're the reason he is where he is.
Yeah.
I was his print shop, by the way. I did all his printing when he got elected, so.
And I know as a member of PAT, we're constantly bending his ear with what we need, you know, with that organization. So I think it's time.
Yeah, I agree.
So is there any anything else, Mark, that you want to cover that you may have missed?
No, it's not so much to. This to some extent was a shock report.
It worked.
It
worked.
To some of the, this is a.
You ruined our Christmas. I'm
No,
just letting you know.
No,
It's a
Mark, I
shock
don't
report, but-
think it's a shock report. I think it's a smack and it's a
It's
reality.
a smack,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm
that's a
not
good one.
shocked.
Yeah.
I'm not either.
I'm not even surprised.
I've been, well, you guys know I've said we need to do some infrastructure work and
Yeah.
this just supports it.
Yeah, but that's part of the reason behind this is where you should be planning. So when you're planning this, are you really considering everything? I guess is part of the purpose here. And it's a fluid document, so whether we do Pioneer Trail next year, I'm just gonna pull out, whether you do Pioneer next year, you do the year after, or something replaces it, that's all part of the fluidity of the report. But it gives you sort of a base to work on.
Well, yeah, there's something should be done. Well, we obviously can't afford to do it on an annual basis, but we need to keep maintaining maintaining is the answer, because like you said, with the Pioneer and Palace, or if we don't fix it, the 1.7 becomes
Yeah,
3.7.
3.7 or 4
yeah,
in a very short period
Yeah.
of time. It's like we talked about the heater for the pool. Maybe we buy it even though we don't need it because it was $50,000 when we looked at it. What is it now? And what is it going to be in 2 years when we do need it?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be available? So I mean,
But I think one is municipalities, one of the things we did that was wrong back several years ago was 0% property tax increases. Those were actually negative budgets because your costs go up, you're going backwards.
that
So,
was, Mayor Soheat had quite a speech actually in Washington, so I recorded it. Basically pointing fingers at his predecessors as to how they hung him out to dry.
Yeah. So all you're doing is moving the problem down the road, and all you do is move the problem down as a bigger problem down the road.
you take that percentage, you put it in reserves and you're ready for capital.
But you take it in, but you're spending it because your cost is going up anyways, like, right? So it's not that you're putting it in programs. It's just costing you more to do. That's cost of service.
Agreed.
See an example, and I don't want to preclude, but if we're not successful with our downtown project. So if the feds say, no, we don't have the money, then we will have to be prepared to pivot.
Yeah,
And maybe we pivot to Pioneer and Palliser, using those that we were designating for that project to match. So you have to be fluid and you have to be able to react. And the one thing I'm happy with is in the past, we never had done the detailed design work for a project in advance. So we would talk to Mark and say, okay, Mark, we're gonna do Pioneer and Palliser. So then they'll have to start and do the design, do the concept, do the design, and then come up with a relatively good estimate cost. But council took the step this year.
We have a
to
project
have
in the
that
can.
work done. So that project would basically be shovel ready. When the
Yeah.
government's talking about shovel ready, that project would be designed, would be ready to go to tender. Same with our downtown project, would be designed, ready to go to tender.
Mhm.
So sometimes you have to spend that money in advance of those projects happening, to be shovel ready.
And what used to be a problem is budgets used to be approved February, March or whatever is when the capital budgets would be approved, then we'd get to go ahead to go. Well, now we're into
Starting to-
June before we're actually going up for tender. All those contractors are gone already.
Yeah.
They've already got their projects on the books. So either we're delaying them or we're paying a premium to get them done. So if you can get them out in January, February, you got better competitiveness, you get better prices.
See, and that's where we're in that position now. January, we can either proceed, if we're successful with our downtown, we can tender it. Or if, like I said, if we're not and we have to pivot, we could then tender the Pioneer and Palliser work. So we're doing something in 2024, significant infrastructure projects.
The challenge was when we're doing work, tendering in June. We're always doing work in October, November, and that's not fun.
And it's
Well,
not
you
good.
just set yourself up for failure is all you're doing.
Yeah.
You can't pave in November. Well, you can, but you get what you
Yeah.
get what you get.
Any questions council would have of Mark and Sarah? Any last comments? Other than you ruined their Christmas.
Oh,
This is actually fantastic.
It's amazing work and it's.
So we're going to McDonald's instead of Chris. So
Yeah.
So, this is a snapshot in time. It changes, but it gives you an idea.
That's great.
Mhm. And like I said before, this is also a draft, so if there's any other comments, let Kim know and he can pass that along to me and I can make sure it gets incorporated into it.
There's just a couple of minor ones that I noticed that we can clean up and
there's one that I see as well, so.
then we'll bring it back. We can bring it back for council approval to accept it for information. And then as Councilor Kroll said, we certainly are not, we'll put it on our website. We'll make it available if anybody's interested. I believe our 2014 project is on our website, but we'll certainly make this available.
It's better get people to look at it.
Yeah.
And will that, excuse me, will that include some of these slides as well?
A lot of these tables are taken from this,
Okay.
and we've got a few changes we've discussed to that. There's some information on the slides that's not in here that I'll be adding.
Because those are great resources.
Yeah, this is the main table for the whole document. Yeah, and all these figures are in there and the cost estimates to back up those prices as well.
And has any sort of cushion been put into those values to account for inflation?
Yeah,
Or,
well, contingency, so everything's in $23, but I believe I used 20 or 25% contingency on those numbers as well.
would you put a disclosure at the bottom or something?
It's actually in the report. I indicate what I used for that number.
Yeah, in the
Let me
report,
double check.
there's the disclosure that it's in the cost estimates are in $23.
Or you can write on that.
I think one of the key is don't go to like saying the lagoon's gonna be $1 million. That's a budget number before you actually do the work. Before you tender it, then you go out and figure out what that is.
Yeah,
So don't take these with a grain of, take the cost with a grain of salt.
yeah,
It's a place to start.
At the start, yeah.
yeah. It's for planning. So I actually say in here, the estimated costs are order of magnitude for planning purposes only. More detailed design, costing and evaluation would need to be done prior to finalizing the actual project budgets.
Because what's gonna happen is you're gonna put this out to the public, and they're gonna say, it doesn't cost $1,000 to do a meter of road.
How do they know?
But that's it, you get nitpicking some of the stuff, and that's really.
They read it on Facebook.
Yeah.
They think
Or I
that's-
remember when I used to do this, we used to
Yeah.
do it this way type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
Things have changed.
Things have changed.
Dump
a lot.
some gravel along the highway and put a pole out by the Nickelback sign.
And looks like I used 25% contingency.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Mr. Mayor, there is a motion there, so
Motion to say, I haven't even looked at it, do I? I pretty much know what he's gonna say with that.
you could probably make it out.
Yeah, motion to thank Sarah and Mark for Mtng for the presentation on the town of Hanna 2023 infrastructure management plan. Councilor Foden, all in favor? I thought that would be there, I just skipped by it.
Let's have a hard copy. Or something.
Mr. Mayor, as far as the rest of I don't have a report.
Just gonna say,
Just got back to work on Monday, so I don't have anything to add, and you spent last night with me, so.
Yeah.
You're probably tired of me, so.
no business items, anything from round table? Okay. We will adjourn at 10:57.
And then Councilor Warwick's allergic